I never thought I would feel this much anger in my own home. One week after my wife died, her daughters turned on me like I was the enemy. They told me I had to leave, packed up my belongings, and looked at me with pure disdain. I felt powerless, betrayed, and more alone than ever. But then, during what was supposed to be the final meeting at the lawyer's office, one simple sentence changed everything, and it left them completely speechless. You will not believe what happened next. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 36 years old, and I never thought a single week could change my life so completely. I had married a wonderful woman, Laura, 2 years ago. She was kind, vibrant, and the most genuine person I had ever met. Life was simple but happy. I had 2 stepdaughters, Emily and Sophie. They were teenagers, 13 and 15, and at first, I thought we would form a bond over time. I wanted to be a good father to them. I really did. Laura's sudden illness changed everything. She passed away quietly in her sleep one night, leaving me with a grief so heavy I could barely breathe. I expected mourning, tears, and support. What I did not expect was their coldness, their hostility, and their complete disregard for the life we had been building together. The first time they spoke to me after Laura's death, they told me I was no longer welcome in the house. Their words were sharp, calculated, and devastating. "You are not our father. You are not family. You have to leave," Emily said, her voice steady, eyes burning with contempt. Sophie nodded silently, looking at me as if I had suddenly become a stranger in my own home. I tried to reason with them. I told them I loved their mother and that I had only ever wanted what was best for them. I reminded them of all the little moments we had, shared movie nights, helping with homework, the birthday surprise Laura had asked me to plan for Emily. None of it mattered. Every memory was twisted in their eyes, used as evidence of some imagined betrayal. I felt powerless. I felt the walls of the home we built together close in on me like a cage. The house itself, once filled with laughter and warmth, now seemed cold, unwelcoming. The sunlight that filtered through the curtains in the mornings felt harsh, exposing me in every corner. Even the garden, which I had spent countless weekends tending with Laura, seemed to mock me. Their presence made every room heavy with tension. I could hear their whispers when I walked past them, voices low but filled with derision. I felt trapped in my own life, as if my grief had become a weapon they were wielding against me. At first, I thought I could survive this through patience. I thought that time would heal their anger, and that eventually they would see I had no intention of replacing their mother, only of honoring her memory. But the hostility only grew. Emily began hiding letters I wrote to Laura in her room, claiming they were weird. Sophie refused to eat meals I prepared, throwing dishes across the table with a precision that made my chest tighten. Their lawyer even warned me to stay away from certain parts of the house, as if I had suddenly become some intruder in a place I had called home. This is where the injustice truly began. Not only had I lost the love of my life, but I was being evicted from the life we had built together, accused of selfishness and manipulation I had never committed. Every day, I felt a little smaller, a little weaker. My friends offered condolences, but none could understand the surreal combination of grief and betrayal I endured. People do not often speak about the cruelty of those closest to you, the kind of sharpness that cuts deeper than any stranger ever could. I felt utterly alone, as if I had been erased from a story I helped write. And then came the final blow. The lawyer called me to the office for what was supposed to be the last discussion about the will and the estate. I expected confrontation, cold words, and humiliation. I did not expect the single sentence that would turn my world upside down, a sentence so simple, so devastating to them, that it would make everything I suffered feel like a prelude to justice. It is strange how life sets the stage for moments like this, where every insult, every slight, every tear you have endured leads to a single point of reckoning. And I was about to reach mine. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe right now. This story is a reminder that true justice is not about anger, it is about standing your ground, reclaiming your life, and letting the truth speak for itself. Stay tuned, because what happens next will shock you and leave no doubt who really deserved to win. After that first meeting with the lawyer, the atmosphere in the house grew unbearable. Emily and Sophie made it clear every single day that I was not welcome. They walked around as if I were a ghost, whispering behind my back, sharing secret glances that made my stomach churn with anger and helplessness. Every attempt to speak with them was met with cold indifference or outright hostility. I remember one night, sitting on the couch where Laura and I used to watch movies, trying to start a conversation about the will. Emily rolled her eyes so hard it felt like she was trying to make her contempt physically visible. Sophie, sitting across from her, did not even look at me. She simply grabbed her phone and ignored my presence completely. I started noticing the little things. Notes left on my pillow that said, "You do not belong here." A plate of food tipped over intentionally on the kitchen floor. My personal belongings, carefully placed in the corner, would mysteriously move overnight. I began to dread waking up in my own home. Every sound became an alarm. Every door closing felt like an accusation. It was not just disrespect, it was a daily psychological assault designed to make me doubt my right to exist in the space I had shared with. Laura, the lawyer, had warned me that their behavior could escalate, but I did not fully comprehend the depths of their cruelty. Emily began documenting everything I did, taking photos of my attempts to clean the house or organize Laura's things, and presenting them to their friends as proof of my supposed manipulation. Sophie spread rumors at school about me, painting me as a selfish man who only cared about money. I could feel the walls closing in tighter with each passing day. The grief I carried for Laura was now mingled with a growing rage I could barely contain. I tried to stay composed, reminding myself that I was the adult in the room, that I had loved Laura, and that my intentions had always been honorable. But every effort was met with new resistance. One evening, as I tried to sit with them over dinner, Emily slammed her hand on the table and shouted, "We do not want you here. Leave now." Sophie joined in with a cold laugh that echoed in the empty spaces of my heart. I could feel my hands trembling, a mixture of fear and fury. I left the table without a word, retreating to my bedroom to sit in the dark, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. The emotional tension spilled over into my daily life. I could not sleep properly, could not focus at work, and every memory of Laura was now tainted by their hostility. I began noticing small, sinister details. Doors left unlocked to scare me. Texts sent to friends to paint me as unstable, and even minor damage to my car. It was as if they were systematically trying to erase my presence, to erase the person who had loved and cared for their mother. The injustice was crushing, and the humiliation was unbearable. One night, I found a note shoved under my bedroom door. It was short, but it stung more than anything they had done before. "You are not family. You never will be. Leave before we make you leave." At that moment, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, I realized I could not endure this any longer. The grief that had weighed on me was now fused with anger. It was not just about loss anymore, it was about dignity. It was about respect. I had been pushed to the edge, and I knew that if I did not take control, they would continue to destroy every part of my life. The breaking point was clear. I could feel it in the tightness of my chest, the heat rising in my face, the tremor in my hands. I was done waiting for them to see reason. I was done hoping that time would heal wounds that had been intentionally inflicted. Something had to change. And I knew, deep down, that the path forward was not one of pleading or negotiation. It was time to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Time to set the stage for a reckoning they would never forget. The turning point did not arrive with shouting or chaos. It came in silence. It came the morning I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back at me. My eyes were sunken, my shoulders slumped, and my expression carried a kind of exhaustion that went beyond lack of sleep. I looked like someone who had surrendered. That realization hit harder than any insult Emily or Sophie had ever thrown at me. I had lost Laura, but I was now losing myself, and that was something I refused to accept. I stood there for a long time, gripping the edge of the sink, breathing slowly, forcing my thoughts to settle. I remembered the man Laura fell in love with. The man who protected her, who stood firm, who believed in fairness and truth. That man would not allow himself to be bullied out of his own life. That man would not let grief become a weakness others could exploit. In that moment, I decided I was done being silent. I was done being small. When I walked out of the bathroom, the house felt different. The same walls stood, the same tension lingered, but something inside me had shifted. Fear was no longer in control. Clarity was. I realized that Emily and Sophie believed they had already won. They believed I was cornered, powerless, and desperate. That false confidence was their greatest mistake. I sat at the kitchen table and began to think carefully, methodically. I did not want chaos. I wanted precision. I wanted justice that would stand unquestioned. I wanted the truth to speak louder than any argument ever could. My emotions were still raw, but I refused to let anger guide me blindly. If I acted, it would be with intelligence and restraint. The lawyer meeting replayed in my mind, the tone, the hesitation, the way he avoided eye contact when discussing certain documents. There was more happening behind the scenes than I had been told. I had sensed it before, but grief clouded my instincts. Now I saw clearly. Something was being hidden. And if something was being hidden, it meant the truth was powerful. I opened my laptop and began gathering everything. Emails from Laura, text messages where she spoke about the house, about security, about protecting me. I found a document she once saved under a strange name. Inside was a scanned copy of an updated will draft. My heart pounded as I read it. It was not finalized, but it was proof of her intent. Laura had planned for my protection. She had anticipated resistance. She had known this day might come. My hands shook, not with fear, but with validation. I was not crazy. I was not imagining things. I was not wrong for standing my ground. Laura trusted me enough to safeguard what we built. That alone gave me strength beyond anything I had felt since her death. From that moment on, I stopped reacting and started preparing. I became quiet, observant, strategic. I stopped engaging in arguments. I stopped defending myself. That change unsettled Emily and Sophie. They watched me more closely. They whispered more. They tried harder to provoke me, but I did not respond. Silence became my shield. Inside, I was constructing a plan. Not a plan of revenge driven by rage, but one built on truth and exposure. I would let the law speak. I would let facts dismantle their false confidence. I would allow their own actions to reveal their intentions. Every night, I wrote notes, timelines, patterns of behavior, statements they made that contradicted each other. Every detail mattered. This was not just about property or inheritance. It was about restoring my dignity. It was about honoring Laura's memory. It was about proving that grief did not make me weak and kindness did not make me foolish. For the first time since Laura passed, I felt calm, not peaceful, but steady, like standing before a storm with solid ground beneath your feet. I knew this would not be easy. I knew they would fight back, but I was no longer afraid of their anger or their threats. They had shown me their worst, and I was still standing. The stage was set. They believed I was retreating. In reality, I was positioning myself. They thought they were erasing me. They did not realize they were writing their own downfall. The next few days became a quiet performance. On the surface, I was compliant, withdrawn, almost defeated. I moved slowly through the house, avoided eye contact, and kept my voice low. But inside, my mind was sharp and alert. Every sound, every word, every movement from Emily and Sophie felt like a piece of a puzzle I was assembling. They thought my silence meant surrender. In reality, it meant control. I scheduled a private meeting with the lawyer. Not a call, not an email, a meeting in person. I needed to see his reactions, to read the tension in his posture, to measure the weight of his words. When I walked into his office, the smell of paper and old furniture greeted me like a courtroom before a verdict. He looked surprised to see me calm. That alone told me I was on the right path. I placed the printed document Laura had saved on his desk. The unfinished will. His eyes widened for half a second before he masked his expression. That moment confirmed everything. She wanted me protected, I said quietly. She was preparing for this. He exhaled slowly, then nodded. Yes, she was. That was all I needed to hear. We went through everything line by line. Ownership clauses, contingencies, legal authority. It was not emotional. It was procedural, precise, final. By the time I left his office, I had a clear roadmap of what would happen and when. The final reading was scheduled. And this time, the truth would be complete. At home, I continued to act smaller. I packed a few boxes slowly, deliberately, letting them believe I was preparing to leave. Emily watched from the hallway with a smirk that made my stomach tighten. Sophie barely hid her satisfaction. Their confidence grew with every passing hour. They believed they had broken me, but each box I packed was calculated. Each item was chosen, documents hidden between clothing, notes sealed in envelopes, evidence layered beneath ordinary objects. My hands moved carefully, but my heart was steady. This was not chaos. This was choreography. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from anticipation. The air felt heavy, like the moment before thunder. I lay in the dark, listening to the quiet breathing of a house that had once been filled with love. I whispered Laura's name, not in sorrow, but in promise. I would not let her memory be twisted. I would not let her intentions be buried. The next morning, I dressed simply. No dramatic gestures, no anger on my face. Calm is far more intimidating than rage. The drive to the office felt longer than usual. Every traffic light was a heartbeat. Every turn was a step closer to truth. They arrived confident. Emily walked ahead, shoulders back, eyes sharp. Sophie followed, phone in hand, barely acknowledging my presence. They were already celebrating a victory that had not yet occurred. We sat in silence as the lawyer opened the folder. The room felt cold, sterile, almost unreal. I could hear the subtle rustle of paper, the faint hum of the air conditioner, the controlled breathing of everyone present. He began reading, standard language, formal phrases, then he paused. That pause was everything. I could feel Emily lean forward. Sophie crossed her arms. They were ready to hear confirmation of their dominance. Instead, the lawyer spoke a sentence that shifted the entire room. Under the updated directive, full authority of the estate transfers to Daniel Carter, effective immediately. Silence crashed into the room like a wave. Emily's face drained of color. Sophie's posture stiffened, her confidence evaporating in seconds. I remained still, calm, grounded. "What?" Emily whispered. The lawyer continued, clause after clause, protection after protection. Laura had anticipated their reaction. She had trusted me. She had legally shielded me. Their voices rose, accusations followed, but it did not matter. I watched their certainty fracture in real time. I watched entitlement collapse. I watched control slip from their grasp. This was not revenge driven by cruelty. This was justice delivered by clarity. And it was only the beginning. The moment the lawyer finished reading, the room felt like it had stopped moving. Silence hung heavy, thick, almost suffocating. I could feel the tension pressing against my chest, yet I remained calm. Emily and Sophie stared at me as if I had suddenly become a stranger, a phantom occupying the space they believed they controlled. Their confidence, which had been so visible just minutes ago, had crumbled completely. Emily's mouth opened and closed, words forming and disappearing like smoke. This cannot be right," she said finally, her voice trembling. She tried to sound authoritative, but it lacked force. The raw disbelief in her eyes was almost satisfying to witness. Sophie's hands shook as she gripped her phone, as if she could somehow undo what had just been revealed by holding it tighter. I remained seated, still and composed, letting the shock settle over them. I did not need to speak. My silence amplified the humiliation, every second dragging them deeper into the realization that they had miscalculated entirely. The lawyer cleared his throat, flipping through the remaining pages, and each additional clause reaffirmed my authority, each sentence stripping them of imagined power. "You had no right to treat him this way," the lawyer said, his tone steady but firm. "Everything your mother intended has been legally executed. Daniel Carter is the rightful executor and beneficiary of the estate as specified." Emily's face flushed a deep crimson. She opened her mouth again, searching for words, for some retort that could shift reality, but none existed. The weight of her entitlement collided with the immovable force of truth. She was speechless, a rare vulnerability laid bare. Sophie attempted a scoff, but it came out hollow, almost pathetic. I could see the anger building behind her eyes, and yet she was powerless to act. Every argument she had rehearsed vanished in an instant. For the first time since Laura's passing, I felt a surge of something I had not allowed myself to feel. In months, relief, triumph, validation, my body relaxed in a way it had not since her death. The crushing weight of grief and helplessness lifted slightly, replaced by clarity and resolution. I had not only survived their attempts to erase me, but I had also emerged stronger. More than that, justice had spoken, and it had spoken in my favor. I rose from my seat slowly, deliberately. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor was a punctuation mark in the room's tense silence. Emily looked away, unable to meet my gaze, and Sophia's fingers fumbled with her phone, as if the device could somehow shield her from the reality she refused to face. I spoke finally, my voice calm, measured, carrying the weight of every insult, every slight, every sleepless night they had inflicted. This is not about revenge. This is about truth. This is about the life I shared with your mother and the promises she made. I let each word linger, giving them space to absorb it. You can be angry, you can protest, but it does not change the facts. The law is clear, and her intentions were clear. I am here because she trusted me to be. The room remained heavy, the air almost electric with their humiliation. Every detail of their prior arrogance was exposed, the whispering, the smirks, the attempts to manipulate me, all laid bare and undone. It was the purest form of justice, one that did not require me to strike out, yell, or retaliate. The law and truth had done it for me. I felt a shiver of release travel from my chest to my shoulders. Months of fear, anxiety, and grief condensed into a single satisfying moment. I was vindicated, not through cruelty, but through careful observation, planning, and the courage to see the truth through. My emotions, once raw and uncontrolled, finally settled into calm confidence. Emily's eyes welled with tears, but they were not the kind that would heal wounds, they were the kind that acknowledged defeat. Sophie sat back, silent, staring at the floor, her pride shattered. I allowed myself a small, controlled smile. This was justice delivered. This was recognition earned. This was the moment I had been waiting for. And in that silence, heavy with their defeat, I finally felt free. Free to grieve, free to honor Laura, free to reclaim my life in a space that had once been poisoned by hostility. The reckoning was complete. After that day, the house felt different. Not because Emily and Sophie had changed, but because I had. I walked through rooms that once seemed suffocating, and for the first time, I noticed light spilling through the curtains in a way that did not feel harsh or accusing. The garden, where I had spent countless hours with Laura, felt alive again. It reminded me that life is not defined by those who try to diminish us, but by the choices we make to honor those we love and the truth we carry inside. The months of tension, sleepless nights, and silent battles had taught me something profound. Strength is not loud or brash. Strength is deliberate, calm, and unwavering. It is the courage to endure injustice without letting it destroy your spirit, and the wisdom to know when action is necessary. I had thought that grief would weaken me, that betrayal would break me, but in reality, it had clarified who I was and what I stood for. I began to reflect on Laura's foresight. She had always been practical, thinking ahead, anticipating challenges before they arrived. She trusted me not because I was perfect, but because I loved her, and she knew I would honor her wishes. That trust became my anchor. In her absence, it was a reminder that love does not vanish with death. It endures in choices, in actions, and in the way we protect what matters most. I also realized the danger of entitlement and arrogance. Emily and Sophie had believed that emotion, fear, and manipulation could bend reality to their will. They underestimated me at every turn, assuming grief made me weak, assuming love made me submissive. Their sense of superiority blinded them to the truth. Justice, patience, and preparation always carry their own power. It is a lesson I will carry forever, not out of malice, but out of clarity. Life does not always hand victory to the loudest voice or the most arrogant. It rewards those who act with purpose and integrity. As I reorganized the house and returned to routines that reminded me of Laura, I felt a quiet sense of liberation. I no longer feared confrontations or whispers behind my back. Their attempts to undermine me had already failed. Every memory of insult, every glance of disdain, every sleepless night had been transformed into fuel for resilience and self-respect. I had reclaimed not just my home, but my peace of mind. The experience also taught me about patience. Revenge is not about immediate gratification or acting in anger. True justice is measured, planned, and executed with precision. It is about letting truth reveal itself in a way that cannot be disputed. Watching their confidence crumble under the weight of their own actions was not only satisfying, it was a reminder that life balances itself when honesty and foresight guide your steps. Looking forward, I feel more grounded than I have in months. I understand now that grief is not weakness, and being wronged does not define me. I honor Laura not just in memories, but in the choices I make, everyday choices that are deliberate, courageous, and guided by integrity. I have learned that even in the darkest moments, clarity and patience can create a path to redemption, validation, and peace. In the end, justice was not loud or vengeful. It was precise, undeniable, and deeply satisfying. I walked away not only vindicated, but stronger, wiser, and more connected to the values that truly matter. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a betrayal that tested your patience and strength? Subscribe now for more gripping, true-to-life stories where justice is served. And watch how courage and clarity always prevail.